All right. For anyone who's out there, we'll get started here in a minute or two. Top of the, I guess 30 after, not top of the hour. I almost said top of the hour, but 30 after. So if you're out there on LinkedIn or YouTube and you can hear us, if you already joined, just please let us know in the comments where you're coming from. But we'll get started here in just a minute. All righty. Well, as I said before, we'll get started 30 after. So we just got another 30 seconds or so here before we get started. We have a guest here on the stage with me. If you're out there and you can hear us, let us know where you're coming from. I know we have a few people out there, so please just go ahead and comment. Let us know where you're coming from, your name. We'd love to know as we get ready to get started here in just a minute. I have here with me today, we'll introduce them in a minute. We have Ben and Dino with us, and we're really excited. So like I said, we'll get started in a minute. We're starting to see the comments come in. We got Mike from New Jersey, first to comment. Welcome, Mike. I think we got Ben's in Texas. And Dino, remind me where you're at again.
I am in Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania, and I'm in Utah. We have Nam from Tel Aviv. And we got Sue from Minnesota. We got a diverse group so far. We'll give it about another 15 seconds before we get started here. All right, we got another Pennsylvania, Janelle. Portland, they're starting to come in. So people all over the place. Salt Lake City, thank you, Ronnie, my hometown. All right, well, why don't we go ahead and get started? We only have 30 minutes, so we don't want to waste anyone's time. Please keep letting us know where you're coming from. Ask questions throughout. So my name is Paul Barnhurst, the FP&A guy, and this session is Connected FP&A, partnering across the business for real impact. How do you break down those silos and build stronger partnerships? This session is sponsored by Revelwood. You'll see a banner running across the bottom that tells you a little bit about Revelwood and how they can help you with your business processes. So please check those out. We also have with us Texans Credit Union. We have Ben Hart, who's the CFO there. So Ben, if you could take a minute and introduce yourself to the audience.
Yeah, Paul, thanks for having me today. Yeah, Ben Hart, Chief Financial Officer here at Texans Credit Union. We're about a $2.4 billion financial institution with 140,000 members. I'm from the credit union land, so we like to say members instead of customers. I've been here for about 5 years. Prior to that, I was the CFO at another credit union for about 5 years. And before that, I cut my teeth with the regulator. So I kind of grew up as an examiner and kind of some supervisory roles for the National Credit Union Administration. So glad to be here today. Look forward to the conversation.
Great. Thanks, Ben. And Dino, why don't you take a minute and introduce yourself?
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I'm Dino Dodona. I'm the VP of Financial Transformation here at Revelwood. I've been here at Revelwood for just about a year, coming up the end of October. Revelwood's been in business for about 3 decades, working closely with the Office of the CFO, for both ERP planning and financial close solutions. I personally started my career in finance, working for Thermo Fisher as a financial analyst. I transitioned over to the technology side when I was asked to lead a system implementation of an accounting system, and from there, I kind of never went back. I worked the rest of my career in both working for software publishers and leading financial transformation projects for small and medium-sized businesses. Before coming to Revelwood, I led a digital advisory practice at Markham Technology, now CBiz, and I'm obviously excited to be here today and discuss FP&A with Ben and Paul. Welcome.
Thrilled to have you, Dino. We won't hold it against you that you left finance. We won't.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. So let's go ahead and jump into things. Before I do that, we have a lot more people have introduced themselves. Keep it coming. Let us know where you're coming from. We got Zimbabwe, India, Fort Wayne, Indiana. Jody just spent 3 hours training in my training today, and she's listening to me again. So I must have done something right, I guess. We got Pittsburgh. All right. So great. We love the diversity. This is one of my favorite things is getting people all over the world. It's always fun to see where you're coming from. So let's jump into things. Where I want to start is, what are some of the warning signs that your FP&A team may be stuck in a silo. I think we've all felt like that, where we feel like, hey, are we operating in a silo? Is anyone paying attention to me? Am I actually connecting with the business? So I know, Dino, you've worked with a lot of different clients. You've seen a lot of transformation projects, sales. You've even been in FP&A. So what are some of the signs you see that tell you, hey, these guys got a silo problem? Like something just isn't quite right here.
Yeah, that's a great question, Paul. I think from my experience, I think some of the red flags I see is, some teams have limited collaboration. Like the FBA teams are kind of stuck in an isolation. They're producing reports and things on their own without, the departments in mind, without working with sales and operations. It leads to kind of like misguided or misled forecasts and budgets and stuff like that. I also, secondly, I see, like a reliance on outdated tools, right? So a lot of folks are working Excel. They're sending those sheets and out across the business. They're trying to aggregate that data manually, which obviously creates a lot of problems and version control and those types of things. And then thirdly, I'll probably add like lack of shared goals, right? So if you're not working closely with the business and you're not focused solely on financial metrics that you're working together on, and you're prioritizing those KPIs, I think you get conflicting priorities throughout the business. And I would say, lastly, finally, obviously, most important is the communication breakdowns, which are really common, among FP&A teams and other parts of the business as they kind of, go in their own directions. And if they're working in a silo, you have trust erodes. The teams become disconnected with with the strategic vision of the business, I believe.
Thank you. I appreciate some of those red flags. And I think, definitely one you mentioned is, hey, do you have shared goals? I think we've all seen challenges sometimes where that doesn't align our priorities. Ben, I'm curious as a leader, you've been a CFO now for a few years and, been in leadership roles. What helps you determine? Obviously you oversee FP&A. What helps you say, hey, we got a silo problem. Like this isn't working for me, so to speak.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of times there's some red flags for me is if there are a lot of surprises throughout the day or throughout the weeks or throughout the quarters when you're starting to plan for maybe the upcoming budget cycle. If you're going to a lot of meetings and say executives feel surprised that there's initiative happening, or maybe I'm surprised I hadn't heard, that we had this capital need for the upcoming calendar year. So for me, it's just kind of, there's going to be surprises here and there, right? I don't think any organization communicates perfectly, but if you're seeing those pile up day to day where you're constantly being kind of caught off guard, I think it's a good time to look in the mirror and go, hey, maybe I'm leading a siloed department and is not really, really incorporated into the rest of the organization very well. We have an epic culture that I won't get into the pillars of our culture framework here, but one of them is rejecting silos, not just for finance and planning, it's for the entire organization. We try to reject silos whenever we can see it. So I think having that top of mind from all of our employees really helps us kind of steer away from a siloed culture beyond finance.
I really like that because, right, breaking down silos, whether it's finance or other areas in the business, typically needs to come from the top. If they're not communicating and they haven't set a tone of, hey, we all cross communicate, we're not building our individual kingdoms, it makes it that much harder to break down those silos at a lower level. So I really appreciate the kind of that mentality from the top. I think that's important. Obviously, there's things you can do if you don't have it, but it's much easier if you do. And so speaking of that, what do you do if you don't have it, Ben? Let's say you're not feel like you're getting the support at the top, but you feel like you're really struggling in finance because there are silos. Any advice you'd offer there?
Well, fortunately here at Texans, I don't have that challenge. I feel like we have a pretty unsiloed organization. But if you are running into silos, unfortunately, I do think you just have to set time aside to really start having meetings with the important stakeholders in the budgeting process and really have it's time consuming, but really trying to gather the needs of each department. What are the capital needs for the next upcoming year? What type of OpEx creep do you expect? What kind of headcount are you expecting? And really start asking a lot of questions from all your peers. I think that the best way to break down silos is to stop looking inward and look outward and start asking questions amongst all of your peers. And I think that starts establishing trust and eventually will break down those silos.
Agreed. Any thoughts or advice you'd offer there, Dino?
Yeah, I think we're going to get to like what creates a great finance business and what, between the partnership between the business and finance. And, I think some of those things are like around, financial transparency, right? So finance teams that openly share their assumptions and how they got to their numbers, and it shows with departments. It helps, foster that mutual kind of understanding, right? And also, I'd say like invest in integrated technology, right? So another way to break down a silo is have everything integrated together, right? So if you're using an FP&A platform that kind of brings it all together, puts the financial data and operational data in one place where you're able to see it all in one spot, one system, one source of the truth, I think is a great way as well. And obviously using those tools, to collaborate like cross-functionally across the different groups within your company as well, right? So I think, lastly, I would say cultivate, I would say, a culture of accountability as well, right? Where every department has ownership over their financial outcomes and they have some kind of KPIs and metrics. I think those things are also important to kind of bringing everybody together within an organization.
No, I agree that accountability is great. Having systems that speak to each other and allow you to easily integrate things versus how many of us have ever been in a meeting where I don't recognize that number, or how did you calculate that number? I always say once that happens, you might as well cancel the meeting, figure out what the number is, and then hold the meeting again after you've aligned, because you're not getting anything done for the rest of that meeting. Where I want to go next is obviously one of the keys in breaking down silos and building connected planning is the whole idea of trust, of building stronger trust-based partnerships. I still remember I was a 20-year-old kid, was a missionary for a church, and I remember one of the leaders told us, she goes, "It is better to be trusted than to be loved." And the idea was your parents are always going to love you. We all have those coworkers we'd love to go get a beer with or go have them on the softball team, but you don't want that person on your project. Who can relate to that one, right? We've all had that person where, hey, they're a ton of fun, but I don't trust them. We have to have the trust of the business. That's critical to be successful. And so I want to talk a few minutes about that. As we're talking about that, if any of you have questions, let us know. We're still getting people telling us where we come from. We got Pakistan, we got Kenya. So that's great. So let's get into building those partnerships. Ben, if I asked you for one piece of advice to increase trust between finance and the business, what would you tell people? What's that? If you could give 1, 2 at the most pieces of advice, what would you say?
Bring your business leaders, your business department leaders along in the process. If you have the mentality that financial planning happens in one office or a few offices, and then it just gets deployed out for everyone to tolerate, if you will, I think you've missed the boat. You have to give each business leader the platform to voice their concerns, or in a lot of instances, just voice their allegiance or support to the goals in the financial planning process. So if you don't have that framework in place here at Texans, our controller and I meet with every department head this time of year. In fact, had a few of those meetings today where we actually talk about the upcoming budget. We're kind of letting them know some of the key assumptions that we're using in the budget to get their buy-in. I want their perspective as well. It has to be a two-way street, having a platform to where it allows you to have a two-way communication when you're building the budget, I think is key. They have to be bought in to the goals and into the budget. And if they don't have the platform to voice their concerns or support of the budget, then you're never going to have an organization moving in a similar fashion.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that in businesses where finance has set a budget and people in the business, I don't even know what it is. They're just doing whatever they want. And then you're trying to explain variances when they don't even know why there's variances, and nobody wins in those situations. So, some great advice there. Dino, kind of your thoughts. Obviously you've seen some clients that have great partnerships between finance and business. What are the qualities you see there when you go in? It's like, all right, it's clear these guys are working well together.
Yeah, I love exactly what Ben was saying. Like I'll put the buzzwords on top of exactly what Ben was saying, right? Which is, is that centralized finance versus decentralized, right? So I go in, I see a lot of folks that are centralized, they're confined. The finance team is working within themselves. They're creating the targets. They're doing all the stuff. And then when it comes time to hold the business responsible for those targets that were not collaborated upon, it becomes a demoralizing part for most people, right? So the companies that I see that are most successful are exactly what Ben said, which is decentralized. They're working with the business leaders. They're getting agreement. They're getting adoption on the plan as they're working through it, right? Everybody knows that maybe finance may make that first iteration, but they're taking it to business is taking a look at it. They're coming to agreement. I think agreement, adoption, accountability, all those types of things are really very important to a successful finance business.
Agree. We've had a couple great comments, and I want to share one thought. I like what LinkedIn user, I'm not sure who it is, doesn't show their name here, but it says, famous quote we've all heard: nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And that's true in personal life, and it's true in business. Another one, recognize the groups have mutually exclusive goals, then go about getting the groups to meet in the middle. You definitely have times where that's the case, where I'm incentivized on this, but that impacts somebody else negatively. And you have to figure out how you align that. And when you have those goals, you need to figure out how you align them so they're all moving in the same direction, and work with everybody so we can all be successful together. Lisa shares, and Lisa mentioned from Revelwood said there's a great, wrong one. That there's read Texans FP&A success story. So on the website, you can see kind of some of Ben's story. Before we move on to the next section, I want to share one more thought here. An idea I love, and I was able to teach this with Christian Wadig, fabulous FP&A person, does a lot out there in the community. And he talks about the emotional bank account. And we've all heard about it. If anyone's ever overdrawn their bank account, not fun. I did that a couple years ago where I accidentally moved money the wrong way. And so I moved like $4,000. It was supposed to go to one account to the other when it only had like $2,000 in it. Like, man. In finance, I think it's easy to overdraw the emotional bank account. And let me explain what I mean. Reorgs, restructuring, budgets, forecasts. Those are negatives. They're gonna be withdrawals. Doesn't matter how well you run the process. If you ask your business if they love reorgs, restructuring, layoffs, budgets, forecasts, just about everybody's going to say no. So you need to make sure you're building it up throughout the year. Variance commentary where it's really negative and you got to tell a bad story, that's going to hurt you. And so the more you put those deposits in, the more you're going to be able to shelter those difficult times that have nothing to do with anything you did wrong. They have to do with the nature of the role. And sometimes we have to be the bearer of bad news. And that can hurt a relationship. So I'm always a big fan of making sure you're putting those deposits in all the way along. So when those negatives come, they know they can trust you. They know you have their best interest, that you're there to support the business. And you're doing this because you believe it's what needs to be done. Or in some cases, it's what you have to do because that's the nature of the role. And so that's what I'll say there. And we're going to move on to talking a little bit about connected FP&A. But before I do that, any other thoughts on this part, Ben or Dino? Anything you'd add here?
I completely agree with you, Paul. I think if you have trusting relationships throughout your organization, if finance has negative news they need to share with the group, they're gonna know that you have their best interest at heart. And so you're right. It takes time, and it takes multiple deposits in that credibility bank, if you will. That way you can spend it when you have to. So yeah, completely agree with you. You got to have trusting relationships throughout the organization.
Right. Yeah. Because exactly. So you can spend it when you have to. We all have to spend. We need money for when we need money, so to speak. All right. So we've talked a little bit about silos. We've talked about the importance of trust. And the reason we need to break down silos, the reason we need trust, if we want to have connected FP&A, doesn't matter what tools we have, doesn't matter if we have a great culture. And I'd argue if you had a great culture, you have trust. But if you haven't broken down silos, you don't have trust. You really can't have connected FP&A. I think those are two of the bedrocks of this. So let's jump in a little bit to connected FP&A. Dino, I'm curious, being kind of on the software and the implementation side. When you hear that word, connected FP&A, I know it's a common word we hear. What do you think of? What does that mean to you?
I mean, I'm certainly going to come at it from the technology side, right? But I think
Really?
two words that come to my mind are, I would say, integration and alignment, right? So I think those two things where finance teams can break down those barriers with their departments, use the technology, have a seamless flow of data going back and forth between the two teams. Whether you're integrating the platforms like ERP, financial close, and CRM. Throw all the other systems in there. They all need to be kind of pulled together into one unified system where we can all go in and we're all kind of working from the same song sheet. I think is the most important thing, right? And again, it's about mindset, right? Like finance teams need to act as strategic partners, and not just number crunchers, right? You need to be connected, connected approach, and with real time insights, decision making, all those things that are needed, right? I would say, lastly, unified data and processes, enabling FP&A to like drive, measurable impact and outcomes on the business, right? So we all know what is that impact FP&A is making on the company, and I think that's easily done through different metrics that we can track, right?
Yeah, no, thank you. That's great, Dino. We have a question. I think we'll get to it here in a minute. I want to get your thoughts here, Ben. What is required? How should companies think about connected FP&A?
Well, yeah, you have to have a system in place that allows you to connect all the department's needs in the budgeting process. And if you have that, like typically what I like to see are some of the, maybe the way the budget is referenced. So like very rarely do I hear, oh, it's Ben's budget. They might say that jokingly, but when I hear things like, hey, this is our budget for the year. Hey, this is how we performed compared to budget this month. This is how we expect that we're going to perform next month compared to budget. That's when you're winning. It means that the budget has buy-in from the organization, and when they use those team-oriented pronouns, I think that's a good. A while ago we talked about red flags to identify silos. If you're hearing your team refer to the budget, as our goals, as our variances, that is a great sign that you're breaking down those silos and you have integrated processes.
100% agree. That shared goal. The worst thing you can do in finance, especially if it's a bad month, to say you missed your numbers.
Yeah,
it's we missed, right? Everybody plays a role. Just because we're not out selling or picking up the phone doesn't mean we play a role. Did we misforecast something? I've done it. I think everybody has. I've done some pretty brutal ones that were not fun to explain to the business. But if I took it to say, hey, you guys should have caught it, it's your problem, that trust is out the window. And I want to ask a question here as we're kind of talking about this that Varun asked. So Ben, I think I'll throw this your way. He asked, what do you think of the philosophy? It's not a no, but here's what needs to happen for this to work, right? Often finance is known as the no police. So maybe give you a minute to address that one.
Yeah, I love that question. It kind of reminds me, I think somebody made a comment earlier about meeting people in the middle and compromising, which is great, right? I mean, those are skill sets we all have to have. But I will say sometimes you do have to say no, and sometimes you can't meet in the middle, because in order for it to be successful, you have to fund that initiative 100%. So I do think it's a part of our roles in finance to say no when we know it's not in the best interest of the organization. If there is a way to get to yes, absolutely. I think you have to communicate that through trusting relationships, through that two-way channel of communication that we were talking about earlier. But if you have trust and you're compelled or convicted that something needs to be not approved in the budget, you have to be honest with your teammates and tell them that just simply can't be done this year.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And then there are situations where you have times the business asks to account for something a certain way that you just legally can't do, right? There are times the answer is no, and there is no wiggle room. I had a situation where someone, they asked me what I wanted the number to be for a forecast. I said, because they were going to accrue to that number and then hold everything back. They were asking me, what do we need to hit our budget? Because we're just going to assume that's what we're going to earn, and then we're going to keep the rest. I'm like, I want it to be what you really think it's going to be, right? There are times you just have to say, no, that's not the way we operate. But those should be few and far between. And so I agree with you, Ben. As much as you can, you want to have that compromise. But unfortunately, there are times when it's no, here's why. Let's discuss how else we can get you to your goal, even though this idea is dead. So one other question for you, Ben. Any advice? I'm sure we have some people out there that are like, I just feel like my company's disconnected. Where should they start? Like, how would you recommend they start thinking about it? Is it you start with technology? Is it people, relationships? Any advice you can offer there?
Yeah, people and relationships first, right? I think you need to get in a room with those stakeholders that have most influence on the finance and planning process, not just in finance, but like throughout the entire organization, and just start having conversations on what how they envision the process to be. And then a close second is you have to have a system in place, right? Here at Texans, we have the Adaptive Insights Workday platform that we use extensively. Revelwood helped us bring that on a few years ago, and I had used it my prior employer as well. You have to have a system in place that actually allows you to break down those silos. That I think the people and relationships can only get you so far, and then you got to have some software to come in and help you integrate everyone in a very efficient manner. So that get the right people in the room. I always say, like, if you have, say, 5, 6, 7, 8 smart people in the room and talk things out through trusting dialogue, you're always going to land in the right spot. And if you miss, you're not going to miss by much.
No, I think that's a great point of getting everybody in the room. And if you have shared trust, it makes it much easier to achieve those goals. Dino, before we kind of move to Q&A, any final thoughts here on the connected FP&A?
Yeah, I mean, just talking about what Ben was getting into there, as I would say, is like if you're trying to assess and figure it out, like kind of get the root cause out, is it manual processes? And I'm going to go opposite of technology now. Is it cultural? Is it something within the finance team they're not communicating properly? Those are types of things that you can see that could be having disconnections within your company and within your business, right? I'd say a key takeaway is, make sure you solve those underlying problems first before you try and layer on technology. If, just same, scenario, we talk about data, bad data in is bad data out, right? So it's the same thing with trying to set up an FP&A process across your organization. If you're not communicating, if you're not, if your teams aren't aligned, you've got a lot of manual processes, you got to kind of root those things out first before you layer on some good shiny technology.
Yeah, I've shared this quote, and anyone who's heard me speak before has probably heard it. Hassard Consulting, I think that guy's name was Ben Hassard. He shared a quote where he said, old processes plus new technology equals expensive, broken, expensive old processes with new technology, just broken. That's all you get. Like basically you're just wasting your money. If you haven't thought about the people, the process, don't implement new technology with old processes because you're just going to have expensive, broken new technology at the end of the day. And that's always stuck with me when I saw that. I was like, I've seen that too many times where you think just throwing the technology at it will fix it. All right. So before we give you guys an opportunity to just kind of wrap up, why don't we see if there's any questions out there? So you have a question, go ahead, send them now. We'll probably just have these guys share a little bit of thoughts as those questions come in. And then we're going to give Dino just 1 minute to kind of share a little bit about Revelwood. So why don't we go ahead, Ben? Any final thoughts as we let the questions come in that anyone has?
Yeah, there's a comment here that says you need to be a CFO go versus a CFO no. I love that from Alex. Completely agree, right? If you develop a reputation that it's always no, 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 and that they're having to go above you as, say, a CFO in order to get a yes, then you don't have a trusting relationship. I think there are times where you do have to say no, but that doesn't mean you say no in a way that you're still not going forward with the organization. So love that quote that Alex just put out there. That's one I need to frame.
Yeah, I know. I thought that was well said. Any final thoughts from you, Dino?
Before we get into my little commercial.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say, just a little bit about Revelwood, just to kind of close it out here from our end, at least. At Revelwood, one of our core values is passion, right? So we are very passionate about helping organizations transform their FP&A, and we live it every day, and we love it. We'd like to do it with, obviously with cutting edge, solutions and software and all those great things. We can help you from one end to the next, from ERP to financial close to FP&A tools. We've been doing it for 30 years. We've got very tenured people at our organization, helping most organizations. If you have a chance, please visit us at rebelwood.com and come and see us and reach out anytime. I'm on LinkedIn, and we're happy to help talk. It doesn't have to be, all about a sale or anything. We're happy to just get into it and have a conversation about how we can help you out. That's all.
And I can remember having several conversations with Revelwood back in 2017 for one of my businesses. The project never moved forward, but I remember you guys were one of the partners we talked about. I think the first time Lisa and I met, she went and looked me up in your CRM. So I
still have it in as an opportunity. It's like my longest standing opportunity, like 3,000 days or something.
Yeah, probably.
We're going to close it one of these days.
All right. I think this is a great question here. So Wingsy, and I hope I got that right, asks, what are the key drivers of successful connected FP&A implementation? Dino, why don't we go there with you? Because I'm sure you've done more than a few implementations.
Oh, yeah. So, if I come at it from a consultant view, I would say, obviously on time and on budget, right? I think a big thing about FP&A where people kind of don't realize is it's much different than an ERP system, right? ERP system, you kind of go off in a vacuum and you got to go do this implementation, right? We have to do everything all at once and then we can go live. It's a big cutover, right? Where FP&A implementations are more around, just getting your data loaded up in the system, and then immediately you can get time to value because you got your actuals in there where you can start doing, reporting, all that stuff. So I think having a successful connectivity is really starting and showing your leaders of your business that you get a quick time to value within weeks, like 4 to 6 weeks. We can have your data load up. You can be looking at reports and looking at actuals and doing those things. I think that quick time to value shows leaders that you've made the right decision and you're starting to connect the business across different organizations.
All right. We'll take one last question here and then we'll be out of time. So I'll get your thoughts on this one, Ben, before we wrap up. Varun says, a follow-up. You get the team buy-in for software and process. You'll implement the system and process, but then you have trouble getting participation. I know you've done an implementation recently, so with Adaptive. Anything you can do in that whole process to prevent that from happening? So any advice there?
Well, I think just communicating, hey, we're bringing this new software, this new expense on board to help you be a part of the process. And you as a business leader need to be part of the process. This isn't Ben's budget. This isn't the CFO's budget. It's not the CEO's budget. This is our budget. And this system is going to allow you to be a part of the process, and you should embrace it and put your fingerprint on finance and planning as an employee outside of the finance department.
Thank you. Great advice. And I know this is a short session, just being 30 minutes, but we've loved the participation from the beginning, letting us know where you're coming from, asking a lot of questions. We've seen a lot of going on in the chat. So thank you so much for joining us. You can reach out to Dino and Ben. You can find them on LinkedIn. You can find me there. And thank you again so much, guys, for joining me.
Thanks for hosting, Paul. We'll see you.
It was good. Thanks, Paul.